Now on to Michael, the most storied franchise. He's a teacher, which we established was not a real job. He's a triathlete. So is he compensating for something? If we know Michael, we know he's not compensating for anything. He provides elite banter and he's got the brother boost. I kind of think of like him and David like the Chuck brothers, and Michael's definitely Brady, just in terms of how brash he is, and you know, yeah, it just makes sense if you know them. Um, yeah, and I just love the banter he provides in terms of roasting people and being outspoken, and I think it's well deserved because Michael's actually been quite good in the league since he's joined. Um, yeah, and he also receives a TWU buff, which, as we saw last year, all the playoffs were made up of 8 people that graduated from the private university there, which is a bit of a bonus. In terms of his pick, pick one, it's really hard to go wrong with pick one. You can just rail forwards off until the Cavs come home, and no one's competing with you, and that's exactly what Michael did. Taking McDavid number one. I didn't love the Kempe pick. I think maybe there's better people there, but at 40 or 41 or whatever, it's not terrible. Same as Aho, fantastic at 41. Again, hard to beat, and always that he's very consistent. So, you're getting Tavares, DeBrincat. Again, he just railed off forwards, all in good positions, all with histories of scoring over a point per game. And they're all dependable. And then even into his 6-7 forwards, Sigmund and Kopitar. I think Kopitar's last season this year, so hopefully he does some magic. He was really good last year. So definitely a crazy forward group. And consistent. We're too worried about injuries with a lot of these guys. They have good floors. So yeah, it makes it really hard to beat. But I think where he went a little bit wrong was with some of his D picks, where Matheson, there's no shot that Matheson has the same value he did previously, with Hudson being so good, and with Dobson, there's no way he's going to get any power play time, and that's the only reason anyone owned Matheson in the past anyways. Tony D'Angelo could, I think Schaefer, thinking about golf. Schaefer was on the power play, and he's definitely getting some time, at least in preseason. But I was kind of expecting D'Angelo to get that time, and if he is, could be good source of points for Michael there. And then Forsling, I don't think he did get a little bit of time last year, but I think that was part of it was due to Ekblad's situation, and I think I'm betting on Ekblad at least this year. I think Ekblad takes it back, and gets a lot more of that time. It should. So yeah, I don't think Forsling is a great source of points there, but I've never really been a Forsling believer, and clearly I've been proved wrong in the past, and he has been good, so I could eat my words. And on to goalies. I think Mike did the smart thing with having the back-to-back pick of taking the Toronto tandem, because no one really wanted to grab them and risk not getting the other guy, and so he just grabbed them both, and I think from his position it made a lot of sense to take them. And then having Dobbs, yeah, that's kind of whatever. Yeah, it sucks that he's got. Yeah, whatever. It's okay. I only gave him a 2 because I don't think Toronto's going to be as good on defense again this year. I think Marner kind of was underrated for his two-way play and helped a lot. And then also, like, both goalies performed very well last year, and I don't know if they're going to perform at that level again. So, yeah. And then also just kind of sucks having Wool out, but that's an aside. So I was tempted to put him a little bit higher, but then when I looked at other 3-star teams and 4-star teams, I realized, this isn't quite the goalie setup that would get you 3 stars, especially because you're doing it with 3 guys instead of 2, like some other teams. His D, again, rated 2 stars, not fantastic, not a lot of upside here. I was tempted to put it a 1, but he did fill the category with guys that at least are ownable and not, rotatable, droppable guys, which can be a handcuff because you can't pick up people as you want. And he's also carrying a 4th D, so it also kind of bumps him up a little bit. And then his forwards, obviously, gave the highest score there. So, yeah. Good enough for a B. And a very high B given his forward group. Then right after him, we have David. It's kind of funny that they both took like exactly the same strategy, it seemed. David definitely grabbed more secure defensemen. But I think in terms of forwards, I actually like David's picks a little bit better. I think they kind of fit with our scoring format a little bit better, arguably, in terms of valuing, shots and goals and all that good stuff. He's definitely got some guys that are young and definitely have their best days ahead of them with Boldy, Thomas, Hintz. I think we can definitely be believers in them doing a lot better. And they've already had good seasons, and they're in fantastic spots in their lineups. Kucherov's always a steal, no matter where you grab him. So that also bodes well for David. And then Kadri and Zari. Kadri's always kind of a stud in our league. He gets picked quite late, puts up really high shot totals. And he's kind of the only kind of guy in Calgary you can depend on for that power play time and top line. So I like the Kadri pick usually. And then Zari, we'll see. In terms of his defense, definitely grab guys that have a bit more name recognition. In terms of their positions, Uyghur and Riley should be anchoring their power plays. Uyghur definitely, Riley should be as well, but Riley's kind of been kind of sucky on it lately. But I know he in the offseason had a conversation with the GM and talked about how he could be a lot better offensively and will be. So we'll see if he's a man of his word. And that's obviously a scary power play with Matthews there. So it could bode well. Again, for our scoring settings, I don't love them because they don't put up crazy high shot totals like some other defensemen. And so their goal totals also usually aren't super high, which are weighted a bit heavier. But again, they're good D. And they fill the position. They're just not those elite guys. And I think Hanifin as well, like if he'd come in and was given a bit more time on ice and power play time, it could have been a lot more he could be a lot better player in Vegas than what he is right now, but I think Theodore kind of has that role. And so it kind of holds him back a little bit. And so for where he picked these guys, yeah, it just kind of hurts a little bit because you can really see it when they look at his goalies and his last guys. Obviously he's playing for some upside here, but I just don't think these guys get it done this year. In terms of deployment with Misa and Smiskevich. For his goalies, I think, he probably has the worst goalies in the league, but the good thing is he can drop them and pick up people as he wishes. So it reflects in his ranking of having, 1. But there's always that upside of like being able to rotate your picks in and out and not having to worry about, losing your draft capital when you drop, Askarov or Picard. So we got a 6, 3, and a 1. Good for 10, so B tier. And due to the way it works with the goalies kind of fixing the ties, Michael's a little bit ahead of him. Then we're on to Sheitkov, who I don't understand the name Sheitkov. Maybe it's an inside joke, but I looked in the past and his name's always been Sheitkov. So Rich Nickel, Yahoo smiles favorably on him in terms of his performance previously. He's always ranked quite high. He got second last year in the championship and in standings. I think the previous year before that, he was also in the playoffs. So Rich has always been a good player when I've been in the league, at least. He must have a job if he's rich. So less time to focus on fantasy, but he's rich. Like I said, consistently high-ranking GM. He's a crafty trader. He doesn't panic. He's pulled off some real dastardly trades in the past. I remember one with Cole that he made that just absolutely screwed me my first year in fantasy. But Rich has been known to make trades, and he doesn't panic. So even if his guys aren't doing well, he knows the value that they have, and part of that allows him to secure really good trades because he doesn't react strongly to people struggling or to things that are sent to him. He also provides strong banter, which is another reason why I like him. Whether it's calling people out in the league, and I've been called out a few times by Rich. It's always a good time, and he doesn't usually seem to be at the end of the joke. Usually he's just the one giving it. So yeah, that's always a good sign. And of course, he's got the TW education buff, so more likely to reach playoffs due to his education. Yeah. Looking at his team highlights, so he has a defense that could win his weeks. So this is a defense core that, not many other people can compete with, and they're definitely people that do well in our setting. So they're all going to be running their power plays. I think Sider is locked for it this year, same as Harley. That concern that was there last year isn't really here now. And Fox is obviously the guy in the Rangers core. And I think the Rangers are going to have a great year this year too. That's just my opinion, but I don't think they're going to be like they were last year. And so, I really liked his approach here because he reached early for Hughes when it wasn't really a reach, because I was also like, if Hughes is still there at 20 or whatever he was projected at, like obviously I'm going to be grabbing him. I would have grabbed him at 15 if I could. So he's got a superstar. Again, lots of injury risk. That sucks. But, 1 year he'll put it together, and he's in his prime for age. So yeah, he's got good forwards. Jarvis is also a guy that, always touted on having an improvement year over year. He's young. He's in a good position in Carolina, so good forward. Same as Marchessault. I think Nashville definitely can't be as bad as they were last year. Maybe Marshy's as he ages, and his role in the power play is a little bit less, and same as 5-on-5. Isn't expected to be quite as good as he was in Vegas that last year that he was there when he kind of had his best year. But nonetheless, still good forward. PLD, don't love him. Just don't love his deployment. He also overperformed a lot last year. But again, I could be proven wrong. Nato I had last year, and he was fantastic for the second half of the season. I think if he keeps getting time with Bedard on the top line, that could continue. But it could also just have been a hot streak. So yeah, but I just remember last year with him, and he was a top 20 player for a long time there, and it was kind of like what happened. So if he keeps that going, then this is a great pick at where Rich got him. Other than that, for forwards, he doesn't have a lot of forwards rostered actually, which is going to hold back his forward score a little bit, just because forwards are the most dependable point sources. Coleman's kind of seen better days, getting a bit older on that third line there, not on the power play at all this year. But yeah, his defense is really solid. And then for goalies, it really hurts that Kochekov is hurt right now. I don't think it's something serious, but he also has Blackwood hurt, and this is a classic Rich strategy from what I've seen, is to grab lots of goalies and kind of offer them out to everyone as the season goes on. Unfortunately, not many people fall for it. And then I think with goalies for Philly, he's probably just gonna see who takes the number one job and drop the other, I would assume, just so he can grab another forward and fill out his spots a bit, because that last guy won't be giving him lots of value. But he's obviously got fantastic goalies. He's got fantastic D, so that's going to bring up his score. I wanted to put his forwards a bit higher, but I think when we compared it to other teams who were carrying a lot more, and besides Hughes and Jarvis, there was a lot better quality, I think, in the top five. It kind of made him drag it a little bit further down, but yeah, overall, really solid team, firmly in the A tier. So expect another good season from Rich. On to the Chung. So we have Tyson, who is a fisherman, which is probably the most real job out of any of us in the primary resource field. Doesn't get more real than that. He's on the Aussie time zone, so he can make those 12 o'clock pickups, at a comfortable time for himself. If Bailey is misbehaving, he can tell him the mom, which gives him a little bit of unique bonus. And he's universally liked, and he's never in the firing line for comments. Very similar to Rich, probably even more so in never in the firing line. Is that it seems like a lot of people like Tyson. They're never making fun of him, and he's able to dish it a little bit too, which is always entertaining. And I think that goes into fantasy a little bit because people are more willing to trade with him because they don't despise him. In terms of his team, I think if Derek didn't have the injury to Barkov, this might be a little bit of a different conversation. But I think his first three picks really might have been the best first three picks that we saw. Grabbing Crosby, Makar, and Tage. I think Makar, anywhere he was picked, is the best value. I mean, you're getting someone that last year at least was a top 5 player, I think. And he's at a D position, which D is absolutely terrible usually. And so, what you're getting at compared to the replacement is just so much better that I think Makar is, fantastic, even in our settings that don't really favor defensemen. Crosby's had 90 points for the last few seasons, been very healthy. He's really got no reason not to be the guy and to continue scoring a lot. I think previously when there was other people around him, he distributed a bit more and played more of a team role. But lately we've just been seeing that, he knows that the team relies on him. And so he's fine with taking the shots and scoring a lot more than he might have in his, his early 30s when the team was a lot better around him. And then Tage has just so much upside. I blasted someone for taking him a few years ago after his standout season. I was right about that. He had a really, really down season. But we've seen in the past that when Tage is healthy, he's a really high average points player, takes lots of shots, and, he's in a great position in Buffalo as the guy. And so I was really high on Tage, and I think getting him, with your third pick is really good value, at least, in the draft. yeah, and so I think that's why I think it's the best three first picks, because I think, it's the most guarantee. Um, I think it's well rounded. I think you grab the best defenseman, and yeah. Looking at the rest of his forwards, Dylan Strome and Trocheck and Raquel. These are all guys that are in good positions. I don't know if Trocheck, yeah, he's probably still going to skate on power play one. I don't think Lafreniere takes that. Maybe not favorable in our settings where we don't value like face-offs and hits as much, or at all for hits. But he always has over 200 shots and, decent plus minus and assists. So great forward there, especially for where he picked him. Same as Strome. Strome had a great season last year. We'll see if he repeats, because he's kind of a pure assist guy. Raquel also really good last year, especially now that he's consistently receiving power play time, or at least did last year. I think his points total should remain pretty similar. It's getting with Rust and Crosby. So like that pick. On to Foley and Geeky. I think Geeky was fantastic after kind of joining that top line and skating with Pasternak. Geeky could be a real steal this year, especially how late he was picked, and then even your very last pick forward of the draft, Kreider, moving to Anaheim, hopefully in that front has a bit of resurgence on that team. And Toffoli too, like same thing, kind of maybe player as Kreider, at least in my mind, maybe a bit more of a sniper. But if he gets on the power play and he's skating with Celebrini, you could expect hopefully a lot of goals from him. Maybe not a crazy shot volume like we've seen in the past. Maybe not. The last few years hasn't had that good of shot volume, but prior, he did. Fowler's skating on the power play from what I've seen in preseason. So another good D2 there, especially for where he was picked. He was picked quite late. And then Wallman. I don't love Wallman this year just because Wallman was really good in San Jose while he was skating on the power play, and his role is definitely limited by Bouchard being there this year. And so good for blocks. He gets a lot of blocks, which is nice. It's consistent. But I think he's going to get a lot less shots and goals and assists just because the nature of his deployment. So I don't really love the Wallman pick this year, even though I loved it last year. Onto goalies, I think he's definitely got a sketchy goalie core. I was thinking about grabbing Schmid, but just because if Hill gets hurt, but I didn't want to waste a roster spot. Same as Forsberg, again, I don't really believe it's a great idea to hold backups if the other guy's going to be getting 60 games if healthy. That's just my opinion. It's good for a stream or something like that. But he could definitely hold more forward. So, yeah. Jari had a really down year last year, and the year before that he wasn't as great as he had been in the past. I think that part of that's just due to Pittsburgh not being as great. And with Shelov's looking pretty good. I don't know if we'll see Jari getting a lot of games. He might get 40 and split it with Shelov's, but there's also a chance that he completely restores his form back to how he was 3 years ago, and is someone that should have been picked in the top 100. We'll see. I didn't pencil him in for that. I don't think it's gonna happen. And Demko again could be an absolute steal. I don't think Vancouver is nearly as good as they were, 2 years ago when Demko was absolutely thrashing. But with his injury risk and kind of that being an unknown of what his volume is going to be, it's kind of hard to rate him very highly. And so because he's carrying so many goalies, and I think it really hurts his team, I didn't put him to 3. I think if Demko was a guaranteed, going to get 50 plus starts, and Jari was also in that similar position, I think I might have put it to 3, but I just couldn't. And I think, you're really holding yourself back by not holding the forwards here. But there's also the upside of if someone goes down, you have them. So you got that. Anyways, 5, 3, 2, that's 10. We got a B tier. On to Toronto. So first in standings, first in championship, first in my heart. Not quite. Diamond ranking 912. So Yahoo smiles on him. Playing since 2018. It seems like he might have a real job. I don't know. I know he lives in, seems Alberta. So they gotta be working there because if you don't work there, Albertans don't seem to be very happy with you. It's kind of how anyways. Anyways, he had a really dominant season last year. Kind of, from start to finish was at the top of the standings. Took number 1 in standings and number 1 in the championship, which is fantastic. Big payday for him. He's a wise trader. He definitely plays with his heart, which, I like to see. And obviously he plays with his brain too. But you can see this with, grabbing the players that he likes and, believing in guys. He comes up with fun things such as the We Five Kings line, which is just, it's funny. Um, he has fantastic dogs, and he provides really good banter in the chat as an active member. Doesn't take many bad trades. I mean, last year he was in the position where he could always be, fleecing people on Sunday, and I think that's really what perpetuated his championship. Was he could just keep rolling it over next week to the next, upgrading his team over and over, and by the end of the season he had a crazy team. Um, yeah, so he took the typical forward heavy strat of just drafting strong forwards, and I think it really worked for him because a lot of them actually fell to him too. What I mean by that is like a lot of good forwards in our settings who might have been picked earlier were available to him, and so they're obvious no-brainers for him. And part of that screwed him with Barkov in terms of, getting Barkov with your third pick, I think in our league is fantastic. He's definitely always, averaging above a point per game, and he's got name value, but, getting injured and being out for the season really hurts and really straps his team, especially that he won't be able to trade him nearly as easily now for anything good. Pasta filled him at 10, which I think is insane because Pasta's previously been a top 6 pick. So at 10 is great, maybe not as great this year with Boston being how they are, but Forsberg and Pasta are great in our format where they shoot lots, get lots of goals, and are definitely scoring lots of points. Getting Stamkos and Russ too, again, good positions on their team. They're on the power plays. They're pretty good for shots. Russ is actually really good for shots usually. Sometimes averages around 3 shots a game. I think Stammer too. I think there's that perception that Stammer's getting quite old, but you look at his age compared to people like Crosby, who's still doing it. And Stamkos isn't. He still should be able to put up some high points totals now that he's figuring out the Nashville system. And I think last year they were running him in the center of the power play. And it looks like in preseason he's on the in the OV office on the left bumper. And so that's where he was on Tampa. So they're definitely looking to use him in his more traditional way there. So we should see hopefully a resurgence of their power play. And Stamkos should really feast there because his power play points weren't great last year. And I think part of that was due to his usage and Yossi being down. In terms of defense, he also got some some sneaky good defense this year. I really like Sanderson. I thought Sanderson was going a lot earlier than he did. Sanderson's young. He put up great totals last year, and he's on a good power play in Ottawa, and gets good minutes. So I really like that. I also like that he grabbed Shabbat. I think Shabbat's not getting power play time with Sanderson there, but Shabbat's consistently logging some of the highest ice times in our league. In the NHL, and that's really good for blocks and just being out there on the ice for assists and for plus minus. So yeah, I actually don't mind the Shabbat pick at all for where he got him. And then Drew Doughty, we'll see, because I think LA is running a 5 forward power play right now, and Doughty could be put on that, but with him aging and with that 5 forward power play being quite good, I don't know if they put Doughty back on it. I think that really hampers his value because 5-on-5 he doesn't shoot as much, and he's not getting as much puck possession with him being a little bit slower than he used to be. And there's also that Brant Clark factor, which, at what point do they want to transition over? We see it with Kopitar changing. Will they change Brant Clark for Doughty? Who knows? Yeah, and then he's got his 5 Kings, which I think is hilarious, but I don't really know if it's great. I think Laferriere is good. He's getting a decent deployment he's on the power play. Seems more, but I think Fogel's a no, maybe just there for the meme. I don't know. I don't know if he'll stick with it. He can definitely rotate them if he wants. Yeah. And then for goalies, he's got good goalies. He's actually got really great goalies this year. So Wolf should be getting lots of starts. He had really good volume last year and was pretty good for his counting stats. Thompson got more playing time last year as well than the other guy. I forget his name. Doesn't matter. We saw him earlier. Anyways, so hopefully 50 starts from Thompson, 55 plus, maybe 60 for Wolf. He's really good in our setting, which values lots of saves. I don't know if Elvis is beginning that starter role again. If he does, Elvis is a great value as well, just for getting lots of shots on him. He's been kind of dookie in the past, but Columbus has obviously shown that they're a little bit better. I don't think they'll be as great this year, but if Elvis is healthy, he's going to get, enough volume that he should be worth it. And then at Scott Wedgwood, with Blackwood being down, Wedgwood suddenly is going to get a bunch of games at the start of the season. We should see, Toronto's probably going to get a lot of points in the start of the season. Hopefully he doesn't use that to his advantage and trade a bunch and pull ahead like he did last year, but it might happen again. So I give him a 3 for goalies. I probably would have given him a 4 if these guys were a bit more proven to have more volume. Again, I kind of look at volume as like the biggest thing in our league. Obviously, goals against too. But if they were proven to have 55 plus game loads, then I probably would have. And these guys are just a little bit unsure. So if I could give a 3.5, I probably would have. But I couldn't, so I didn't. So he's in B. And I think obviously he would have been a lot higher if that Barkov injury hadn't have happened. And I usually don't take the injuries into account, but with him being out for the full year, I obviously had to. On to Thanos. Thanos, I think Cole might have a real job. I think maybe he might work for his family. Maybe he doesn't. I don't remember. He will be missing for Thanksgiving, and he's often MIA. In terms of sending him trades, he doesn't really know how to operate the trade menu. So yeah, if you send a trade to Cole, expect an email in 7 days saying it expired. He didn't thirst for Cole Caulfield this year. Last year, I think he picked him quite early, if my memory serves me correct, and I thought he was this year because he was picking around me, and so I was like, okay, well, there's no way I'm going to get Caulfield, but he didn't. So that's kind of sad because I always liked seeing Cole Caulfield on Cole's team. The TW Education Fuff, that's supposed to be Buff, is present. I think, yeah, Cole made playoffs last year. He had a good season. And yeah, so that's obviously a factor. And yeah, and that's not to say that he doesn't do any trades. He has done trades in the past. And sometimes they're whoppers. But, for the... Don't bother sending him trade offers if you want to hear back in a couple days. He's got a mix of consistent forwards with mixed ceilings. What I mean by that is, a lot of his guys definitely do have some upside, but it's not necessarily guaranteed. So Tom Wilson had a fantastic year last year. I think the best season he's had. We don't have any hits in our league, which kind of holds him back a little bit, but he didn't pay too much for him for his draft. Same as Suzuki, also fantastic year last year, and Holloway, and Velarde. And so it's like you're getting a lot of guys who had fantastic years last year, and so the question remains, and obviously as someone who drafted Werenski and Connor, I'm aware of this, but are they able to repeat that fantastic year they had, or are they going to regress a little bit? Luckily, a lot of these guys are young, so the possibility they progress is definitely there, but we'll see. He's got Marner. We'll see how Marner fits into the Vegas system. I definitely would rather have Eichel, but obviously Eichel wasn't available to him when Thanos picked. But Marner showed in the past that he can be a good source for kind of everything, for assists, for blocks. He didn't shoot a ton in Toronto, and his goal totals weren't crazy, but he gets enough assists and enough blocks, and his plus minus is always good enough that he's a superstar forward. Onto his guys at the end here. Definitely some more obviously risk baked in, but the nice thing is he can kind of rotate them as he pleases. I like the Taves pick just for the fact that Jonathan Taves is back on the Jets and playing again, but we'll see how he does on that second line there. And I think Monahan was fantastic. I think Cole was like one pick before me, and he grabbed Monahan, and I was planning on grabbing Monahan, and it was just so sad. But anyways, Monahan last year when he was playing was absolutely fantastic, and Cole grabbed him quite late still, so definitely some value there. In terms of his defense, Lane Hudson was fantastic last year, and in preseason he's been shooting a lot, and that was kind of his thing last year. Was he had good point totals, but he just his percentages were pretty crazy. He didn't shoot a ton. In preseason he's been shooting a lot, and so if he's on the power play again in the second season, and surrounded by good players, good cast, and he's got more high quality defensemen with Dobson there now to kind of help him defensively. There could be some huge upside with Hudson here, just based off what we saw previously. Same as Schaefer. He's been rolling on power play one a bit and getting some, I think, third pairing in on the Islanders. So kind of in a protected role, but for fantasy at least, he's going to be exposed to some scoring at least, and so we'll see if he sticks there. But yeah, and Taves is always pretty consistent in terms of a defenseman. Yeah, always with like the McCarr injury risk too. Like if McCarr goes down, Taves is there, especially with Byram gone or Bowen Byron. Taves could benefit from that. And then for goalies with Darcy Kemper was fantastic last year. I don't know if LA is going to be as good this year, but there's no reason to believe that Darcy Kemper is not going to get a lot of starts. And then Hofer, I think Binnington's kind of shown he's there. So Hofer is kind of just a straggler. So yeah, goalies, I think 2 makes sense, giving his Kemper. Good goalie, but Hofer's not really doing much for him. D, I gave a 3. I really like his D here. Yeah, I just think it's consistent. It's on the verge of being a 2 maybe, but with Schaefer, you never really know. There could be a lot of upside. I think Hudson's going to be absolutely fantastic in terms of points. So yeah. And then for forwards, I give him a 4. Yeah, I think just in comparison to other people, like in terms of the depth of what these guys look like, and how these guys compare to other teams, it wasn't quite right to put him out of 5, such as a team like Kevin's or other ones. So that's a C. Mr. Svechnikov. Okay. So we have Caleb. He's a silver 696 rating, which again means nothing. Or maybe it does. I don't know. He might have a real job. We don't really know. We know he attends plays. Yeah, who knows? So he prioritizes real life over GMing, as we saw with the draft. Everyone else had their draft day clear, but someone else had to go to a play. He has a TW education buff due to doing school at TWU and making playoffs last year. He knows how to secure the bag. He's won previously and quite recently. And fun fact, he has the longest history with Lando. So I've known Caleb. I know Caleb probably the least out of everyone I know here, but I've known him the longest because for my preview weekend at Trinity Western, I think I was matched with Caleb and I hardly saw him. But yeah, that means that I met him before other guys that I know in this league better. So fun fact. He took a non-traditional start with goalie and then defenseman, which I don't hate. Like I said earlier, if you're not in the absolute top spots of like the top 10 and you're going to get like that superstar, it's kind of hard to compete with the forward only draft because you're just never going to catch up to someone that has McKinnon or Jack Hughes or Kaprizov. So I like that he kind of pivoted and took a different approach, similar to Luke. Grabbed Bouchard, who had a decent year last year, but I think he's shown in playoffs and he's shown in previous years that he can really raise his shot total and get some more goals and get a lot more points. And I think in mid-20s, I think Bouchard was a good pick. Rest of his D isn't as amazing. I don't think Gavrikov is as great in fantasy as he may be in real life, but he has Montour, and again, I don't love Montour just because Dunn's there and he doesn't get as much playing time on the power play. And I know Seattle runs kind of 2 different units for pretty equal time, like 60 or 55-45 split. But Montour just hasn't shown he's been the player at Seattle that he was at Florida when he was always on the power play. And then Renzel, I think, is also on power play 1 right now, but there's just too much unknown there in terms of what he's going to do. I think it definitely could be a good pick in terms of like where he was drafted and then what he might be able to do for him. And so I like that. But yeah, looking at his forwards, because of this kind of different approach, he definitely has a lot more of those kind of mid, like lower than pick 80 forwards down to like 160, where he grabbed all his forwards. And I think they're, obviously quite good value there. Actually, I think I'm speaking out of turn there. A lot of these guys were gone a little bit earlier, like Heischer. I like Gunther. Gunther shoots a lot. He's in a great role. I actually think Gunther should have a good year. Just, the top line in Utah looks quite nice, and Clayton Keller's an obvious, he's an obvious killer out there. Yeah, so I like that. I think Svechnikov is always kind of a sketchy one. We always think he's going to be really good. He gives lots of shots some games, and then nothing the other games. I had him last year, and I think Caleb also had him as well. And, with his injury risk, it's always kind of sketchy, but he's young and hopefully he puts it together. And you see his hands out there, and I think, the guy obviously has some skill. So maybe he puts it together this year. Bo Horvat, Byfield, again, good solid picks. Yeah, nothing to hate there about his forwards for the top five. Then we get down to the ancillary guys. So we have Gauthier and Tippett. Again, good shot volume. Definitely, keen nose for goals here. I think Tippett's on power play. I actually don't know if he is right now in Philly. I think they took him off. They're kind of trying some different things, but his line looks nice with Zegras and Mishikov. So Tippett definitely could have a better season than last year. Puts up lots of shots, which I like, because there's always that possibility that some of them start going in. And then same as Gauthier. Yeah, hopefully he gets some goals this year and kind of progresses. Yeah, sorry. On to Helly. Like I said earlier, it's kind of hard to go wrong with Hellebuck. Obviously, given his past couple of years and how dominant he was last year, it's hard to expect Winnipeg to be as good just because their season was an anomaly in terms of how many wins they had, um, and how low of goals they had as well. Their team definitely looks a little bit weaker with the movement of Ehlers. Yeah, of Ehlers. But who knows? He could definitely run it back. I just don't count on him being as insane as he was last year, where he was number one player in our league. But obviously fantastic value if you're picking him in the top first round there in terms of the points you're getting. I do worry a little bit with the Olympic break, if he's going to get played a lot for US and go to the finals and have a lot of volume there. Maybe they spare him a little bit this year. But I think Winnipeg has a pretty favorable schedule. Don't quote me on that in terms of like back-to-backs, I'm thinking. Yeah, never mind. I think they do. So he might get a lot of time, a lot of starts, and usually he wants to start, so we'll see. Just hopefully he doesn't get hurt. I'm not jinxing anything there, Caleb. Yeah, the rest of the goalies, Merlinen and Prosvetov, are just kind of fillers. They're maybe backups, maybe not even getting any time. We'll see. But anyways, that's good enough for a rating of 9. Giving him a C. But these guys aren't good enough that he could drop them if he wanted to, which is kind of nice. Yeah, they're not like guys he has to hold on to. So easily it could be a 3, especially if he's rotated goalies throughout the week. He could get a lot more points per goal. All right, on to Jameson. So Jameson is a divisive figure. He absolutely thrashed us 2 years ago and got third in the standings last year and third in the championship. He had an absolute crazy team last year with, I think he grabbed it was like McDavid, Eichel, and Aho was the first 3 picks somehow. And then he got Werenski too, like really late. And then he got Blackwood somehow. So I have no idea how he didn't put it together last year, but he didn't. And so, yeah, it's too bad. He beat us in the Four Nations thing as well. So he's got a good winning history. And he's consistently in the playoffs and doing his thing. So there's no way he has a real job just based on how active he is. Definitely plays with his brain, not with his heart. He's not afraid to rub a few elbows, keep those elbows up, and to kind of push people a little bit, which I certainly like. I find entertaining. He's got the TW education buff, so guaranteed playoffs. And yeah, quality has a certain quantity has a certain quality of his own. I think what I mean by that is just in terms of his trades. If you send 100 and you get 1 back, that might be a win. So he gets a lot of trades sent. And some done as well. And eventually they happen. You get someone on a bad day and they make a trade. The unfortunate thing is he gets put in his place by Michael in terms of, weekly matchups. He usually loses to Michael. And in terms of the chat too, it can be a bit humiliating. So I feel for him there. It's hard to play with your dad in the same league. But yeah, he will get the trade done. He's willing to work with you, but he knows what he wants, and he's not going to make a bad trade if he knows it's a bad trade. All right. So He's got Kirill the thrower, Kirill the cap this year. What I mean by that is Kirill going to be as elite as last year? Is he, really going to show off? I heard he turned down a ridiculous contract. So obviously he's got in his mind that he's going to be crazy fantastic and show everyone crazy totals and hopefully use that to get a huge payday. But the other thing is, in the past when I've owned him, he was hurt for like half the year. And it's like, okay, you don't want to trade a guy like that for nothing. And so you hold on to him. And so there's just that worry that something like that happens again, which obviously could happen to anyone. But I think, for Cap, it's happened a few times. So yeah, you just have to be a little bit worried there. He got Stutz. So, decent pick there as well. I think his second pick was actually Macklin Celebrini, which I think was kind of a reach, because even if Celebrini has an absolutely fantastic year, and outperforms what he did last year, and he was good last year when I picked him at like 160, but picking him in second round, I think there was like 20 guys that were probably more guaranteed, and so you didn't really need to take a risk like this if you're getting a guy like Cap early. It just hurts to take that risk, because if he has a lights out season, he's probably going to perform similar to someone else he could have grabbed who's done that 4 times in their career. But yeah, Stützle is a good third pick there. He's shown really high upside in the past with 90-point season, and I think it's only a matter of time as he gets a little bit older and reaches his prime that he kind of repeats that and shoots to the moon. We got Hurdle again, same as last year. I don't love Hurdle. I think he's probably on that front on the power play in Vegas, so he's definitely got some value there. And his line 2 looks nice. So maybe I do like the Hurdle pick, actually. I don't know. I didn't like it at first, but like the more I talk about it, the more I think about it, it's not bad. I think the other one that really hurts Jameson though is grabbing Tkachuk. Oh yeah, I don't think Macklin's actually hurt right now. I think he's healthy. I think he's playing. So I didn't take that into account. If he is hurt, then that sucks too. But yeah, grabbing Matthew, I think I don't like it because he's not going to be back until December, January. I don't think he comes back December just based on the nature of his injury and how long they waited to treat it. I think they should have treated it sooner, but they waited for quite a while. Yeah. So yeah, you're just kind of like really hampering yourself by taking, quite a risky second pick and then taking Tkachuk. And yeah, it just leaves you in a position where you're probably not going to be winning as many weeks early as you might want to. And so you're not going to be able to take advantage of the trading, which obviously Jameson knows as an experienced manager. But, I think in a league now where there's less Sunday trades, I think I could see him running into trouble with that and having a hard time recovering even after Matthew comes back. And he's obviously going to want to try to play in the Olympics. I think, if he comes back early or rushes rehab and does that, I just don't think it bodes well for him either. So, yeah, I'm happy to see him on Jameson's team because it definitely weakens him a little bit early. But yeah, and then if you look at other forwards he has Nazar, Stankoven, Nelson, Leonard, Savoy. All of these guys are guys that he can pick up or drop. He's probably just hoping for like a lotto ticket and for one of them to pop off so he can trade them. But yeah, Brock Nelson, currently I think he's on power play 1. We'll see if that sticks over Lehkonen. Could be really good value where he picked. Same as Stankoven, he's really good in Dallas. It just all matters on deployment in Carolina how good he is. Nazar, again, he's swinging for the moon here with Nazar. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. I don't think it's going to be fantastic, but that's my opinion. For Falk, Parekh, and Jones, I don't think any of these guys get power play time. Maybe Parekh, if I was to pick one out of the 3. In the past, I thought Jones was gonna take it, but then I realized that him and Ekblad are similar ages, and Ekblad's been there a lot longer. And it's also shown that he could do it better. And so I think they kind of keep with Ekblad as their power play guy, and I think that kind of hurts Jones because Jones would probably be really good if he did get it, and I could eat my words. But there's a reason I didn't draft Jones and I drafted Ekblad instead. But yeah, Parekh in preseason is looking pretty good. I don't think he pushes Weegar off the power play, but you never know. Yeah, Weegar puts up a lot of other totals that make him valuable, and so he doesn't necessarily have to be there. And so if he chooses to maybe yield the position or to, take on a new role and Perek comes in and steals the show, then that could be great. But I just don't think it's going to happen. And then Falk also didn't get it to over Fowler. So yeah, not a great decor in terms of points and stats that count in our league. Yeah. On to goalies, rocking high volume with Binnington and Knight. If Knight and Binnington both get lots of starts, then I think this is great based on where he picked them. He didn't pay too much for them. And same as Ingram, whoever claims him. If he gets claimed, I remember when I saw that he was going on waivers and I searched him and I saw that he was already on Jameson's team. I was like, oh, of course. But yeah, depending where he goes, he could be really good value. And I think Wallsted's just there in case of the injury to Gus. Yeah. So goalies, good in terms of like shot volume against them. Knight's gonna get shelled, but that doesn't matter too much in our league because we count saves quite highly and goals against don't hurt us too much, and volume is king. So I gave him 3 stars for goalies, 2 for D because I think his D not great, and for forwards I gave him a 4 because there's a lot of risk. And yeah, I don't love the Celebrini pick. I probably would have taken Bedard even over him. And that's someone that owned Celebrini last year and absolutely loved it. But yeah, and then Tkachuk that just hurts. So that gives him a C. Oh no. Okay. On to Strongbone. So we have Jaron. Jaron owns he owns his own company. So obviously a real job. He joined in 2020. Yahoo likes him, so he's been doing pretty well since he joined. Previous winner, so that bodes well for him. Education buff for going to TWU, so he's probably a lock for playoffs, but he has a newborn, so we'll see how that affects him. He's an erratic but active trader. He's known to make probably the most aggressive trades in terms of like risk reward. He's always kind of rotating things, and sometimes that works for him, sometimes it doesn't, but he kind of owns it and doesn't care, and I think I really like that about his game, is that he doesn't overthink it. He knows what to do to win the cup, and he will do whatever it takes to get there, so he will move who he needs to move. He doesn't remain attached to people, except for maybe Ovi. He did a classic forward-heavy draft, like we see with a lot of managers in this league. Obviously, things have changed a little bit lately. I forgot to change the Bedard thing as well, so he doesn't have that anymore. But he does have Landeskog. Landeskog was really good in playoffs. He skated on the power play. He wasn't on top line, but I think, there's always a chance that he replaces Nichushkin on the top line as well, and then that could be a lot of value. And he was out there hitting and blocking and doing it all, so maybe, with giving that 3-year rehab, he's totally fine. He just was really taking it slow to make sure he was able to actually continue playing. Obviously, he's got Matthews, and I think Matthews has a lot to prove this year, kind of with the down year last year. He has that lingering wrist issue, which does kind of suck in terms of, what's going to manage or happen, what's going to happen with his load management, especially with Olympics. How is he going to handle that? But I think he kind of has a chip on his shoulder to kind of prove that he's still that top goal scorer in the league, especially without Marner too, where maybe people will give a lot more credit to Marner being there and helping him. But I think he's got something to prove in terms of like doing without him. So it could be an explosive season for Matthews. But there's always that injury risk. He's definitely gone through injuries before. But when he's healthy, he's easily usually a top 5 player, especially in our scoring where goals and plus minus and assists and shots basically rule the game. Anyways, he went with Jake next. Jake's usually really good. He's usually a really high average player when he's healthy, in the past with Pittsburgh and with Tampa last year. So hopefully being more settled this year, he shows up. Demidov, I think, was a little bit of a reach, but there's always those chances that those rookies can go off. Same as Snyder, kind of the same thing where he's getting the good deployment. He's getting line 1, power play 1 right now. So while he's maybe an unknown name, definitely lots of upside there with these two players. Demidov is also on power play 1, I think, too, over Line, which we'll see if it sticks. Maybe they're trying to just nurture that core. But Line was very good. I think he might have, he had a lot of power play goals last year. So I don't know why they're not running with him on it. Anyways, on a defense, he's got some defense. He's actually got 4 guys. I don't know who this player is, unfortunately. That I should probably look into that. Um, but he's got Ekholm, Burns, and Nurse. Oh, and Dickinson. Um, yeah, with this, we just got a lot of these old guys that are just chilling. I guess Nurse and I just look at Burns. I think old guy, but anyways, so if Makar goes down, there could be a chance that Burns gets the power play over Taves, but Burns' shot totals last year were a lot lower than usual. And he's just kind of continuing that progression. So definitely there to just fill a spot and maybe for a little bit of name recognition. Darnell also Nurse is usually, kind of the same as Ekholm, is usually consistent at least in terms of blocks. Gets lots of ice time, so he's there for some assists as well in 5-on-5, which is nice. But again, not really guys that I'm super thrilled about. I don't remember where he drafted them, but yeah, unless you're getting them at like a crazy discount, they're not guys I would hold on my team. And you're kind of stuck with them because you can't really drop them because people will grab them. They're kind of like in that in-between zone. Yeah, and then Lundell's obviously boosted a bit because of all the injuries. We'll see if he benefits a lot in his role, whether he gets some more power play time on number one, whether he skates, first or second. Definitely going to skate first or second line, but it kind of depends how they balance that out with their center. And then Ovi. Ovi was definitely chasing the goal record. There's probably not much I need to say here because everyone knows, but had a fantastic year, great shooting percentage, lots of shots, really high goals, low assists. They're obviously feeding him all year while he's chasing that. He's another year older, kind of in uncharted territory. Clearly, he's a once in a lifetime player, so maybe that doesn't affect him as much. We'll see. But the point remains, how committed is he going to be to absolutely destroying this year? Like, what are his goals? Is it just to push that record along? Is it to keep playing? Is it to secure payday? Is it to go to the playoffs again? We don't really know how he's going to perform or what he's going to be focused on. If he's focused on goals again and increasing his lead, then maybe that's a great pick. But I think at the spot that Jaren took him, and just the risk of being in your 40s and playing in the NHL, I think it takes its toll, and we'll see what his point totals actually are this year. Decord, I like. He's going to get some volume. The risky thing is Grubauer. Grubauer was great last year, had lots of playing time at the end of the year, and it kind of took it a little bit from Decord, which is kind of sketchy, but I think Decord is, there's no reason not to trust him in Seattle, and so, pencil him in for at least 50 starts, 45, 50 starts is, very safe, and good enough for our league to have as a goalie. And Seattle's kind of always a middle team anyways, so let's save. Then Lindgren, that's the person I forgot earlier. Usually I think Thompson gets a little bit more of the share in terms of starts, and probably how it should be just based on how they've performed in the past. But yeah, there's a bit of risk with that in terms of Decord, worrying about what's going to happen with him and Grubauer if they try to bring Grubauer back, maybe so they can attract people for a trade, or if they actually want to give him more time because he's been playing quite well. And yeah, Lindgren, he's getting held back by Thompson being there, so definitely like a 1B, but not a strong one. So I give him a 2 for goalies because of that. His forwards are 5. I still think he's got absolute firepower up front. If I was higher on Demidov and Ovechkin, maybe I would have given that a 6, but I didn't. So because I'm not as high on them as Jaren is, obviously. And then for D, I gave him a 2 just because of how he compares to other people. I don't think it's absolutely trash. I think they're really consistent and they're gonna get you lots of category coverage, and so yeah, good overall draft from Jaren. Not quite as risky as I've seen in the past from Jaren. And he had a pretty good original draft too with the guys he picked. C tier. Bojaden, so he's been playing since 2010, so he was playing, as his brain was developing as a preteen. He was on the Yahoo app grinding away. He might have a job, but it doesn't matter because commissioning is his job. I don't know how he finds the time to, push all these trades through and deal with messages and to have a family and to work a job, but he does it, and it's quite impressive. A fantastic commissioner. He's got the TW education buff. He has been known to abuse his power a little bit. I know in MLB, he set someone's lineup who had not been set in their lineup for a long time, and that was a little bit snaky. He's respected, loved, and feared by all. While he's always very nice and fair as a commissioner, there are times when he's been known to make some absolutely crazy trades and just go off for a week. to really secure a win, and that should cause fear in a lot of people's hearts if they're facing him because you never really know when you can rest. The one annoying thing is he spends too much time sorting his lineup. So when I was making this video, he had like all his players at the very end, so I had to like crop everything to do this, which is super annoying. I don't know how he finds time to sort all those guys because the guys that aren't playing are always on the bench and the guys that are playing are always on. I don't understand. He got his bread this year, so in terms of his draft strategy, he always goes for the players he likes. I think the one regret I had in my draft was not taking Panarin instead of Connor. I like Connor, I think, in terms of upside, and obviously Panarin's injured now, so I'm glad I dodged that bullet. But it's not supposed to be long term at all. But I think I would have rather grabbed Panarin just so I could have flipped him to Bailey and gotten a little bit more of a payday. He definitely takes a boomer bust approach with a lot of these young guys, so he's carrying, I guess you could still consider Raymond young, but he's definitely proven himself. But with Hughes, with Clark, with Smith, Fantilli, Michkov, their best days are ahead of them, and it just goes to show, like, okay, are they going to have that this season, or is it going to be 2 seasons down the line? A lot of these guys are still young in the pipeline, and I know Fantilli's probably not going to get the time he deserves or would benefit from with Monahan being there, because he was fantastic last year, and maybe his value was brought up a bit by like that happening. But with Monahan back, I think he's stuck kind of in that 2C role, and maybe not even on the power play, so that kind of sucks. Michkov looks like he's going to get good deployment. Hopefully with Tortorella gone, he can really shine. I know there's someone I was targeting my draft too, and he went the round I was going to take him just a little bit sooner, so I like that pick. And then, yeah, with J-Rob and Panarin, that's obviously a deadly combo in terms of forwards. Even Raymond too. Raymond is crazy on the power play, like 30 plus power play points. So, I think Detroit's also going to kind of continue to roll with their power play. There's no reason I don't think it shouldn't. And Raymond's definitely a big benefactor. Is probably one of the more selfish players on the power play in terms of taking shots and going for the goal. In terms of defense, he really has nothing for defense. He took Zadorov off the waiver wire, which is good. Probably the best player available in terms of filling that spot. And then Brant Clark, I don't think is going to get any power play time, just with Doughty being there. I think I talked about it before. But with Doughty being there and with them running 5 players and it working quite well, I think that really tanks Clark's value. And Clark's value was really at a peak when David had him last year for a bit there, and then it kind of fell off a lot. He doesn't really do much in terms of other stuff like blocks and other stuff in ice time, where he gets exposure to assists and stuff. But the question remains, I guess, with Luke Hughes, and that's kind of where I'm being a bit pessimistic here. What's going to happen with Luke Hughes on the power play? Obviously, I think he should get some time, but in the time that he was running it last year, he wasn't quite as good as maybe people would have hoped or expected, and didn't really give him the best case for continuing to keep him there over Dougie, and Dougie's so great on the power play. He shoots a ton. He does kind of what you want. He's got a hard shot too, and so maybe if Hughes had done a better job of proving his case when Hughes was out last year, we'd see more certainty here. But I just don't quite believe that Hughes is going to be the guy to get that power play spot, and that's where a lot of his value lies, because again, he gets more shots, exposure, gets more opportunities to take shots. And he can really skate into his thing and have the ice time. Then we're going on to his goalies, and I think goalies were probably maybe actually one of the best parts of his draft. He got 2 guys that are guaranteed high volume in Velmelka and Swayman. Obviously not expect to be a fantastic Boston team this year, but volume has a certain quality of its own, as Napoleon said, or I guess quantity has a certain quality of its own. And we should expect them both to be recipients of that. And so at the spot he drafted them, in terms of ADP, I think he got really good value there. And then Korpisalo, again, I don't really believe in holding the tandem if you're guaranteed to get like 55 plus starts on a guy, but he's doing it. And then Varlamov, again, with Strokman was kind of hurt a bit last year. Varlamov has always been a really good backup in terms of not ERA, I'm thinking baseball still, but not having high goals against. And so there might be some reason to keep Varlamov once he's back, and even if he gets traded or something, but I don't think he's supposed to be traded. So anyways, I gave him a 3 for goalies because of that. They're not quite elite guys on elite teams, but they're definitely like what you want for this league setting. And yeah, For D, I gave him a 1. Again, obviously this could go up if Luke Hughes gets a bit more of a desirable role. I just don't see it happening. And for forwards, I gave him a 5. And I was kind of torn on giving him a 6 or a 5. Yeah, I think the only reason I couldn't give him a 6 was because I looked at the teams that kind of influenced, or I looked at the teams that had 6s before, such as David's and Michael's. I think they're the only ones with 6s. And it's quite obvious that, they really prioritized forwards, and they have those absolute superstars too, which really pull them up. And so that's why I kind of left him with a 5. And so that gives them a C, but definitely a stronger offense than some other 5s out there. So we'll see. And they're young, so there's some upside, but there's also a lot of risk. Yeah. What's in there? On to me. Been playing since 2022. I can't hold down a job. I have no prospects till I'm 30, so that's a reality of me, is that I will not have an income until I'm 30. I have a TW education, but recently a UBC nerf. I saw that last year in which, I didn't perform as well, and that was since starting at UBC. So there's definitely some additional support there for that theory. And I hope it doesn't continue this year, because that would really hurt me in fantasy and my overall financial situation if I lost this year again. It definitely could happen. Another feature of me is I antagonize people I haven't met. I was really bummed that I couldn't come to the live draft this year, because I was actually really excited to meet a lot of you and show that I'm not just some mean person who looks to shit on all your picks here. It's all in sarcasm, but one day I will. I'm stuck in freaking med school. Stupid Prince George. But yeah, I had the worst draft, but the weird thing is I ended up actually coming away with most of the players that I had targeted. So usually I had like 3 people picked for each round this year, and I got a lot of the people I wanted. So either that means I have terrible strategy and planning, or I'm gonna have a good year and I'm onto it. But we'll see. You guys all seem to think that I had a terrible draft, so we'll stick with that. I like that narrative better than pumping my own tires. And I think another feature is I refuse to do the standard FHL draft. I think my first year I did it where you just grab all forwards, and it fits the points weighting really well, and you're kind of guaranteed to do well. I think it's boring, and I think at 15 too, like, I wasn't able to grab like a complete superstar. I think Kyle Connor's obviously good in our settings, but I wasn't able to grab like an Eichel or a Hughes like I was hoping to, and so that kind of made me switch. And I think I like to try to do something a little bit different in terms of grabbing a lot of defense, which no one else values. I think it's kind of fun, and maybe you guys think it's stupid and infuriating, but I think it's really fun to try something different in our league settings. In terms of my team, I don't want to talk about it too much because I think you guys don't want to hear about it, but yeah, I do value defense quite highly, and that's because defense obviously sucks so bad in our league. The caveat is that you have to own them, and there are a few defensemen that play a little bit of a different game than the other ones. So for instance, the ones that shoot a lot and can achieve higher goal totals are definitely a lot more valuable than I think are perceived, just because, if you compare them to the replacement of like, a Darnell Nurse, there's a really wide gap between them. Whereas if you do that with forwards and you replace someone who'd be picked in Darnell Nurse's position as a forward, like 170 or 180, whatever, you compare that to like a top forward, there's a little bit less of a gap. And so if you look at the relative points differential, I think that's where those top D actually really shine, even if the perceived value, and definitely the trade value definitely isn't there, because a lot of people don't see the trade value in these guys that I picked either. So yeah, I went for a forward heavy strategy, locked in the guys that are known to have really good shot totals and are in good positions. I'm not worried about Yossi's Potts syndrome. I just think if I was dealing with a chronic illness and I got it solved when I was 35, how amazing I'd feel. He's definitely been dealing with it for years. Concussion just kind of brings it on and makes it more obvious when he's not healing well. And so having that solved, I think, is a big plus. And I'm actually really high on Roman Yossi this year because of that. And Werenski too, like, he's always been a shooter and a goal scorer, and Columbus has kind of been shit around him. But, he's shown in this healthy year and as a team definitely progressed that, he's that elite guy. So a lot of you might look at it as a one-off, but if you look at the trend there and kind of the development, if he stays healthy, I'm a total believer that he's going to return his value. When I picked him at like 25 or whatever, he was like a top 15 player last year, and I think at defense that's even more valuable. In terms of forwards, like I said, I grabbed Kyle Connor, Mika, and Valeri. I think they're good value for where I had to grab them. Definitely a lot of risk. They're in good positions though on the power play. Luckily, Nichushkin's not up to any off ice shenanigans. So I'm happy with them. Happy with O'Reilly. I think he's consistent. Kind of a boring pick, but he's on the power play in the middle, on center spot. So hopefully he puts in work there, or he might be at net front. I don't know. I had to grab Patrick Kane, probably my favorite player in the league. I grabbed him last year. I actually think he's decent in our settings. He doesn't really do much 5-on-5. He gets some greasy goals sometimes, but he gets goals. And he's on the power play. I think he's actually kind of a little bit underrated, so I'm actually kind of happy he fell to me where he did, because I would have traded him for him anyways. Dorofeyev, I wasn't looking to grab, but I kind of had to. I had him last year, and he was absolutely electric. Tons of shots, lots of goals for a young. I think he's 24 now. So I'm very happy I got him at like pick 160 or something like that. I'm not like guaranteed that he's going to be on power play 1, which he was last year, and he definitely feasted. But in terms of like having a shooter on the power play, I think it might make sense to add him. I think, well, he might not start the year on it based on how it's looking. I think he could get time. And we'll see, because last year he also skated with Eichel a bit on the first line instead of Barbashev, and he's definitely better, and their efficiency was a lot higher. It's not slated like that right now, and this injury definitely doesn't help him. But it's a high upside play on risky play on my side if he does get that exposure. But I don't think he needs it, because he definitely shoots and he snipes. So happy with that. Obviously Zegras, Bjorkstrand. Bjorkstrand is someone I've been eyeing for a while now. They brought him into Tampa because they needed someone with a right shot, left shot, anyways, to fill that spot for right shot for Stamkos. So I think that's maybe one of my best picks. Hopefully, we'll see if it pays off. He's always a shooter in Columbus and in Seattle as well a little bit. Seattle didn't really utilize him that way, but we've seen in preseason that he's skating on the top power play over Hagel. And I think he's going to be locked in that position. I think he's really going to feast. I don't think he's going to get second line, which would be nice, but even if he's on the third and skating on the first power play, I think that's fantastic value for where I got him. And then Zegras, hopefully he stays with Michkov and Tippett. That could be actually a scary line. I think it gives him a little bit less pressure to be the number 1 center. Just with a new coach, new situation, hopefully he can shine. Obviously I got burnt by him last year. He kind of sucked. But we'll see. I'm not going to talk about these guys because they're kind of boring. I'm done talking. For goalies, these are the 2 goalies I was hoping to get. I had to reach a little bit for Saros, just because I didn't think he'd be available by my 5th pick. But I'm happy with him at 4. Again, for me, I'm just targeting volume, guys that play a lot, so I don't have to carry as many goalies and can carry more forwards. So I'm probably running 2 goalies most of the year for that reason. And Saros has had way better years than he did in the past, and I don't believe Nashville can possibly be as bad as they were last year. So pencil him in for 55 plus starts guaranteed, as long as he doesn't get hurt. A lot of saves, and a lot of upside in terms of Nashville doing better than last year. Same as John Gibson, he's been fantastic in his career. I didn't realize he was actually as young as he is. He's only like 30 or something like that, 29, 31. I thought he was way older just based on how often he's hurt. But his stats in Anaheim and previous to that are actually very good. And coming into Detroit, where they're needing a good goalie, Talbot's good, but he's 38 years old, and he's also got injury woes. So I think John Gibson could be, a good volume play. And actually might be one of my better picks, hopefully. I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't see that or don't agree, but that's kind of what I'm hoping with John Gibson pick. And so I give myself a 4 for offense, 4 for defense, obviously, and then a 3 for goalies, just because I'm not clogged up at the position. And that gives me an A, which maybe is a little bit controversial. But, yeah. Because you all thought I had a terrible draft. All right. So that actually is it now for everything. I think the main thing, we'll just flip back here, is that league parity is at an all-time high. I think doing the slow draft really allowed some people to shine. and make really good picks. I think, the first round, everything was like boom, boom, boom in order of like what I thought would be fantastic. And everyone was just making outrageously great picks. That continued in the second round and third, and then things kind of changed as it went along. But yeah, everyone made fantastic drafts. Ranking teams was really hard this year. There's really little to separate them. That's kind of why I went with this new strategy. I don't love the way that the tier list turned out, actually. I think like breaking it down to the stars kind of ignored some team strengths, and while I tried to take like our point setting into account when drafting things, I don't think it obviously worked. Um, but relative to the alternative of just kind of like looking at things and doing it, or looking at projected stats, I think this is a more fair way to do it. Um, yeah, I think it's obvious that the forward heavy draft remains the favored option. I'm glad to see some people kind of diverted from this, possibly because they had to, because they didn't have the option of taking those superstars, and I really like seeing that just as someone that likes an alternative strategy and likes to gamble a little bit more. Um, yeah, but like I said, I don't think this accurately represents maybe what I would have ranked teams as based on like our league settings and projected points and everything. So yeah. Anyways, thank you for watching. Yeah. Oh, the real rank. So this is what rankings with bias and all. This is kind of my thoughts based on looking at people's teams, looking at the managers, the point settings, and everything included. This is not how I think the season is going to end. This is how I think you're starting off. So sorry to put Jameson at the very bottom, but I think he's got a lot of work cut out for him. I think he can do it, but I don't think he's starting from the best position. As we continue, we round out B tier with the top of B being Big Chungus. Work our way into A. I had to put myself in A. Glizzy. We go Bojaden. And then the very top in S tier, we're going with Michael. We go Buzzsaw Louie ahead of him because I like his offense better. We go Rich. And then last and not least, Good Fella tops your power rankings for the initial tier list, full of bias. All right. Well, I appreciate you watching. I hope you learned something. I hope you don't take this too seriously. Yeah, I'm glad I got this done. It's always fun to do. It's really just for the memes, but there is some real opinion here behind the picks in the last one. So yeah, hopefully you guys have some good banter, and yeah, we'll have a great season.